Chapter 533. Only then did the profound practitioners of the Iron Blood Warriors react. Fortunately, Peng specially brought along 2 alchemists for this trip. They were pushed in front of Peng, shivering as they helped Peng to stop his bleeding and bandage him up. They also fed him quite a lot of medicinal pills. Under Yiqing Luo's urging, they tossed and turned for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. By the time the blood on Peng's wrist had stopped, Yiqing Luo speedily asked everyone to leave the secret room. After everyone left the secret room, Yiqing Luo was still standing in the secret room. Qing Luo, still not leaving? Yan Xiaoyi leaned in. But he saw Yiqing Luo walking to the side of the huge axe as she stared at that huge axe, half squinting her eyes as though she was thinking about something. On hearing that Yiqing Luo had yet to come out, Peng hurriedly ordered the cultivator who was carrying him to rush into the secret room. "What are you doing?" Although Yiqing Luo had saved his life, but from the bottom of his heart, Peng despised these brats who were still wet behind the ears. Moreover, he had always been suspicious of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about Peng as she slowly squatted down. Peng then realized that Yiqing Luo wanted to take away his huge axe. Although the giant axe contained some dark force's power, the power was still there. To profounders, what they desired the most was strength. Peng was the same. Otherwise, he would not have used his soul to exchange for more power with the dark forces. Seeing Yiqing Luo's interest towards the huge axe, he thought of the huge axe's power. Fear was fear, but his thirst for power made him unwilling to truly give up on this giant axe. How could Yiqing Luo not see through Peng's vile thoughts? She sneered and moved her body away. "Are you sure you still want this broken axe?" Peng's gaze stared straight at the huge axe. Immediately, his face was filled with shock, and his entire body trembled. On that huge axe, there was still half of Peng's arm. It did not loosen from the handle at all because it was cut off. His 5 fingers were still tightly gripping the handle of the giant axe. It should have been covered in blood because half of his arm had been cut off. However, there was no trace of blood on that hand. Furthermore, it was pale and shriveled, as though it was only skin wrapped around a few bones. Peng's scalp tingled as goosebumps appeared all over his body. If he had continued to hold on to that giant axe, it wouldn't just be that half of his hand that had turned into a dried corpse. At this moment, how would Peng dare to have any thoughts towards that giant axe? Looking at Peng's expression, Yiqing Luo knew what he was thinking. She curled her lips in disdain, lowered her eyes again, and reached for the giant axe. "Little girl, wait." Suddenly, an old voice came from behind. Soon after, she heard the sound of staggering footsteps approaching her step by step. Yiqing Luo's hand, which had yet to touch the huge axe, suddenly paused. She turned her head and saw Holy Pirate crawl out from the corner. He walked toward her with strange and comical steps. The people standing at the entrance of the secret room were startled. None of them realized that there was someone else in this secret room. Holy shit! Who was this filthy, stinky old man? His skin color was completely obscured by the filth on his body. Dark forces? Holy Pirate didn't bother about the gazes on him as he walked directly to Yiqing Luo's side and lifted his leg to kick the huge axe. Yiqing Luo tilted her head. "You know?" Holy Pirate didn't say a word. On that pitch-black face, Yiqing Luo couldn't tell what his current emotions were. Chapter 534. God Thief slowly squatted down. Although his actions seemed stiff, but at least he squatted down. He stretched out his hand as he picked up the huge axe. When the huge axe was on the ground, other than feeling that the 5 withered fingers were a little strange, there wasn't anything else. But at this moment, the minute God Thief touched the huge axe, they saw a ball of black, the 5 fingers which were cut off from the long handle, charging directly towards God Thief's hand. The entire huge axe was instantly encircled by the black chi. God Thief. Yiqing Luo frowned as she berated. The feather fan in her hands swiftly waved towards that black chi. Wait a minute. God Thief's voice was gentle and calm. Yiqing Luo's actions stopped abruptly. Her brows creased as she looked at God Thief in puzzlement. But she saw God Thief's finger flicking lightly, and that ball of black chi seemed to have touched something terrifying as it speedily escaped. God Thief stretched out his other hand as he casually waved it on the huge axe. That ball of black chi was instantly dispersed. That half of the hand which was holding the long handle suddenly burnt into black ashes. A huge axe reverted back to its normal look. But, no matter how ordinary this huge axe's outer appearance was, but the scene of it forming bloodlines on Yuqi Peng's body, sucking Yuqi Peng's blood and then being enveloped by the extreme yin chi was still deeply rooted in everyone's mind. Keep it, we'll go back and research on it. God Thief passed the huge axe over to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she immediately understood the reason why God Thief didn't allow her to touch the huge axe. After several rounds of understanding towards the dark force's energy, Yiqing Luo roughly knew that this gust of profound yin chi depended on something to survive. Which was also the so-called host. Just like Yuqi Peng in his courtyard, he would be attached to by the profound yin chi, but he couldn't leave the courtyard. And this huge axe was the same. The profound yin chi was attached to the huge axe, and if Yiqing Luo had directly touched the huge axe, the next host which the black chi would attach to would be her. Why was God Thief not afraid of this energy at all? Dealing with it, he still looked as though he could do it with ease. This wasn't the time to ask questions, so Yiqing Luo didn't ask any further. She received the huge axe and placed it into the profound phoenix ring, and with her back facing God Thief, she squatted down. Xiao Jin walked in. Qing Luo, let me carry him, you lead the way. Holy Pirate did not hesitate. He jumped onto Xiao Jin's back. Young and strong lads make people feel at ease. Little girl, if I let you carry me any longer, this old man's bones will be burned by your bones. Hearing God Thief's words, Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she rolled her eyes and walked past the crowd as she walked to the front, preparing to lead the way. Suddenly, a sharp whistle rang throughout the entire Death God Castle. The whistle was sharp, ear-piercing, and deafening. Those with lower profound ranks immediately covered their ears and screamed in pain. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. It's too late, the castle lord has taken action. Castle master? Yuqi Peng exclaimed. He had previously inquired about this mission and naturally understood the situation in Death God Castle. The castle lord of Death God Castle had always been a legend. Some even felt that the so-called castle lord totally didn't exist. The castle lord, in Yiqing Luo's words, was it really the castle lord of Death God Castle? Qing Luo, did you see Death God Castle's castle lord earlier? Yan Xiaoyi's brows creased slightly as she recalled the scene where Yiqing Luo passed the map to her and left alone. Are you all right? Chapter 535. Everyone was astonished. Especially the World Group's youngsters. When they heard Yiqing Luo's words, they instantly became anxious. After all, in their hearts, Yiqing Luo was the strongest among them. Yiqing Luo's invincibility was deeply ingrained in their hearts. He had totally forgotten that Yiqing Luo's profound grade was actually the lowest among the 20 over youngsters. Then what should we do? Xiao Jin turned around to look at the group of brothers behind him. In the Fort Master's territory, even if we wanted to leave secretly, I'm afraid it's impossible. Their whereabouts had been discovered. This also meant that as the castle master of Death God Castle, he could make use of the various formations or mechanisms in the castle to observe all of their actions. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as her slender brows creased. Bring them along and follow the original route back. I'll attract them. No. No. This suggestion had just left Yiqing Luo's mouth when she was interrupted by Xiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi at the same time. Yiqing Luo had already said that this castle lord was extremely dangerous. If Yiqing Luo was the only one who attracted the castle lord's attention, wouldn't that be pushing Yiqing Luo into the abyss of danger? Trust me, I'll be fine. Yiqing Luo summoned Shiju out from the pet space and flipped herself onto its back as she shook her head lightly. If we stay here, none of us will be able to walk out of Death God Castle. But After you guys leave Death God Castle, if I still haven't come out, look for Xian to save me. Yan Xiao Yi and Xiao Jin looked at each other. What Yi Qing Luo said wasn't without reason. If they were to stay here, then no one would be able to leave Death God Castle alive. They might as well act separately. As long as they brought the Overlord over, they would definitely be able to save Yi Qing Luo. What they needed to do now was to believe in Yi Qing Luo. He trusted in her ability to survive. Qing Luo. Xiao Jin eventually pursed his lips as he called out Yi Qing Luo's name. Yi Qing Luo turned around. We believe in you, so, stay alive and wait for us, for His Majesty. The petite figure sitting on Shi Ju's back stiffened slightly. Trust. These two words, ever since she entered the devil class, she had heard it a few times. She was very glad that she was allocated to the devil class, and was able to get to know this group of brothers. He had never felt so close to another person's heart. From the brothers of the devil class, he could feel such a warm feeling in his heart. They saw her as their hope. And they were also her hope. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up into a smile filled with confidence. All right. She spat out a word from her pink lips. With that, the giant leopard beast beneath him moved its limbs and disappeared into the secret passage in the blink of an eye. The profound practitioners of the Iron Blood Warriors had been listening attentively to their conversation. After all, this group of people was their only hope of survival. Then, when they heard them talking about asking Xian or His Majesty to save them, they were all dumbfounded. Dizun? Did they hear wrongly? How could these little kids be related to the high and mighty Dizun? But when he thought about it, these kids were talking to him about how to escape from Death God Castle. It wouldn't do them any good to mention Dizun for no reason. Moreover, the Dizun's name seemed to contain the word Xian. The Iron Blood Warriors candidates all drew in a breath of cold air as they suppressed the restlessness in their hearts. If these youngsters were really related to the Dizun, then they had almost killed all these youths just now. Chapter 536. Yi Qing Luo, who was speedily rushing towards the direction of the whistle, didn't have the time to delve into the thoughts of the Iron Blood Warriors. She had to fight for time for her brothers to leave. If she didn't guess wrongly, Castle Lord had created such a huge commotion, it should be because of her. It wasn't that Yi Qing Luo was narcissistic. But this Castle Lord. His attitude towards her was really as though he hadn't taken any medication. She only felt that the Castle Lord's face was rather familiar. But that didn't mean that she really knew him. Castle Lord had a "you dare to forget about me" expression, which made Yi Qing Luo's heart filled with curses. In her mind, there really wasn't a single bit of memory regarding the Castle Lord. That astonishing, outstanding face, if they really had a deep relationship, Yi Qing Luo would absolutely not forget about it. The whistle was getting nearer and nearer. Along the way, Yi Qing Luo didn't intentionally avoid any arrays or mechanisms, directly passing through without any obstruction. She was even more certain of the guess in her heart. This Castle Lord's target was indeed her. He intentionally created such a commotion, just to lure her to look for him. In the long secret passage, a ray of light was faintly projected from the front. She was about to reach her destination. That destination which the Castle Lord had set for her. Yi Qing Luo didn't have the slightest feeling of relief. Her heart was beating wildly. She frowned as she raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. The rate of her heartbeat was slightly hurried. She was nervous, but also afraid. It had been a long time since she had such a feeling. The whistle sounded, and it stopped. A creak sound was heard and the flickering door in front of her slowly opened just as Yi Qing Luo approached it. A ray of bright light shot into Yi Qing Luo's eyes. She raised her hand and blocked that ray of light. Squinting her eyes, she stared vigilantly at everything behind this door. Then, he saw a figure standing against the light. A blood-red robe, under the light, seemed to be plated with a layer of gold, sparkling with luster. His black hair fluttered on his shoulders even though there was no wind. Looking from afar, Yiqing Luo felt the man's entire body emitting a chill. His eyes were filled with a chilly aura, staring straight at her. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. Looking around, he didn't see anyone else. Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly. That whistle just now, wasn't that the whistle to summon the guards of Death God Castle? How could this be? Yiqing Luo's expression suddenly sunk. You want to deal with my friend? The man who stood against the light took heavy steps towards Yiqing Luo. The cold air that came from his body assaulted her face. He lowered his eyes, his gaze cold, and his tone overbearing. The safety of your friends depends on whether you listen to me or not. Her voice was cold and emotionless. But Yiqing Luo somehow heard a cool and wild feeling from it. Are you threatening me? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. She really couldn't figure out what the lord of the castle wanted to do. The castle lord raised his chin. He was indeed threatening Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo laughed involuntarily. Do you know that what I hate the most is threats? Her smile was like a flower, but it did not reach her eyes. Her voice paused and Yiqing Luo's figure moved. Her speed was extremely fast and in just an instant, the feather fan in her hands was aimed directly at the castle lord's chest. The castle lord dodged sideways. Following that, his long arm stretched out, grabbing Yiqing Luo's wrist. Using a little strength, Yiqing Luo's feet lost balance as she staggered and fell forward. Chapter 537. You still want to kill me? The icy cold words seemed to be squeezed out from the slits of his teeth, containing a thick grievance. Castle Lord's chilly eyes were filled with an intense chill as he stared at Yiqing Luo sinisterly. That gaze seemed to want to tear Yiqing Luo into pieces, but it concealed some other emotions. It was so complicated that Yiqing Luo couldn't understand it at all. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. If I catch you, would I still be afraid of those guards stopping my brothers? Yiqing Luo calmly met Castle Lord's sharp gaze, not concealing her own thoughts at all. Yiqing Luo. Castle Lord flew into a rage out of humiliation as he bellowed. The cold and arrogant face of the wooden man twisted a little. Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter. From this look, Castle Lord's face seemed even more familiar. Where on earth had she seen this face before? Suddenly, Yiqing Luo had a flash of inspiration as she suddenly thought of something. You are that. That chilly expression and sharp gaze young man. Upon hearing Yiqing Luo's words, the cold lines on his face instantly softened. He stretched out his hand and his cold fingers lifted Yiqing Luo's lower jaw. He forced her gaze to meet his. That pair of malicious eyes faintly sparkled with a ray of hope. You've recalled? His tone was filled with joy. Yiqing Luo frowned, thinking of him made him so happy. Only, in her memory, she didn't feel that she knew him. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she tried to probe. Have you been to Heavenly Academy before? The glow in the young man's eyes darkened. After some time, he nodded his head. Then if I didn't remember wrongly, have we met at Heavenly Academy's novice training grounds? Yiqing Luo added another sentence to probe. At that time, she was at the training grounds, following the instructor's instructions, training. She felt someone staring at her and casually glanced over. It seemed that this castle lord was among those few masters. She even used his face to compare with Dmo Xian. Only, she didn't put that episode in her heart, so naturally she didn't remember that young man. Wasn't it normal to not recognize him when she saw him? Yiqing Luo was really in a daze. The cold fingers on her chin suddenly tightened their grip, causing her to frown and suck in a breath of cold air from the pain. Damn it! Was it acting up again? A cold glint flashed past Yiqing Luo's charming eyes. Profound chi palm wind stirred and profound chi broke out of her body. Her palm was wrapped in a ball of red light as she swung it straight at the castle lord's chest. However, the castle lord had no intention of dodging. He pinched Yiqing Luo's lower jaw like that, as though a wild beast staring at its prey, staring at her without blinking. Yiqing Luo's palm strike landed directly on his chest. His expression did not change in the slightest. Only his slender body stiffened for a moment. A shallow, muffled groan escaped from his nostrils. The castle lord's face became even colder. Yiqing Luo was cursing in her heart. What kind of mental illness was this? He would rather be beaten than let go of her. Her palm strike was merciless. If it was any other lower profound grade cultivator, their internal organs would be affected by this palm strike. But he didn't even change his expression. On the contrary, his fingers clenched even tighter. The piercing pain from her lower jaw made Yiqing Luo feel that her lower jaw bone was about to be crushed by him. But this young man was stubborn. Even if it was a head-on clash, he refused to let go. Yiqing Luo's reaction made the whirlpool and the young man's eyes surge even more intensely. His thin lips curled into an extremely shallow arc as he spat out a sentence coldly. My name is Zhu Wu Xian. From now onwards, you better remember this name. Chapter 538. In front of her eyes, that cold and aloof face gradually enlarged in her pupils. Damn it. Did the scene need to suddenly become so strange? What was going on with this cool mad battle style? Molesting her just because of a disagreement? Yiqing Luo's palm wind rose again. This palm strike of hers wasn't aimed towards the castle lord's chest. But it was directly aimed towards the castle lord's face. At the same time, she raised her leg and kicked towards the man's weakest spot. However, the castle lord seemed to have guessed her actions as his slender long legs pressed down on Yiqing Luo's legs as he locked both of her hands. His thin lips and Yiqing Luo's were separated by a finger's distance. Ow! A beast's cry was heard, and immediately following that, a white figure flashed past. Yiqing Luo only felt something furry covering her face. The castle lord's hand left the restraint on her. His slender body took a step back. Yiqing Luo, who had released the restraint, speedily hugged the little furry ball on her face as she retreated out of the castle lord's attack range. Little Nine. This little furry ball wasn't anyone else but the nine-tailed fox. Little Nine's sharp mouth stuck close to Yiqing Luo's face. Only this time, it wasn't licking her face like usual. Instead, it revealed its sharp teeth and bit her. Little Nine controlled his strength, but Yiqing Luo still felt a piercing pain. Little Nine was angry. Dmo Xian passed Little Nine to her so that he could protect her in Death God Castle. But unfortunately, Yiqing Luo left Little Nine outside Death God Castle. Alright, Little Nine, it's my fault. Luckily you came over in time to save me. Yiqing Luo rubbed the area where she was bitten and rubbed its little head as her eyes were covered with a layer of warmth. Humph. Little Nine turned its head away as its little emotions started to surge up. It felt that its future mistress didn't trust its ability. Although it couldn't be compared to future mistress's white tiger sacred beast, but at least it was the one and only nine-tailed fox sacred beast. Look, it just didn't catch up to her, and future mistress was almost kissed by another man. If Master knew that Master couldn't bear to vent his anger on his future mistress, he would definitely vent his anger on it. The pitch-black fox eyes of Little Nine formed a long and narrow arc, fiercely glaring at Shiju, who was sitting up straight. He was simply about to vomit blood. Seeing his master being molested by another man, he did not step forward to help his master. Shiju blinked its bell-like eyes innocently, not understanding why the nine-tailed fox's eyes were filled with contempt. It raised its claws and scratched its ears, looking confused. It was hard for Shiju not to understand. Shiju's age as a mirage beast was equivalent to a 6 or 7-year-old child. Other than obeying the orders of its master, it did not have the intelligence to act on its own and distinguish right from wrong. The atmosphere between the two beasts and the man was extremely harmonious. The castle lord, who had his face scratched by Little Nine earlier, touched the blood stains on his face as his sinister eagle-like black eyes stared coldly at Yiqing Luo. She smiled at a small battle pet, and her side profile with gentle lines. An indescribable rage surged from the bottom of his heart. Why couldn't she show such an expression in front of him? Obviously. In the past she would smile at him. But now in her eyes, he totally didn't exist. She would rather place her vision on a little fur ball than to look at him. Little Nine, who had shrunk into Yiqing Luo's palm and was nibbling on her finger to show that he was angry, suddenly felt his hair stand up as his little body trembled. Chapter 539. Yiqing Luo followed Little Nine's line of sight and realized that the castle lord was still standing by the side. Her slender brows creased slightly. What on earth are you trying to do? Remember me. 3 emotionless words came out of his mouth. Yiqing Luo was really about to throw up blood. Hadn't she already remembered him? Could it be that they had met before at the freshman training grounds? She really didn't have any impression at all. Wait a minute. Yiqing Luo suddenly thought of something as her slender brows creased even tighter. Zhu Wu Xan? Zhu? Master Chu? Yiqing Luo's expression suddenly congealed as her eyes were filled with puzzlement. You are that Master Chu? Earlier, when she was forcibly molested by him, she didn't notice that Zhu Wu Xian had said his own name. Now that she thought about it, she recalled that not long ago, Master Chu had sent his followers to send her medicine and pills. As well as the Elder Quarter's Grand Elder who mentioned Master Chu. It was him? Yes. Zhu Wu Xian replied decisively. I thought, you haven't forgotten about me. Yiqing Luo remained silent. In her memories, there really wasn't any memory of Zhu Wu Xian. She had completely merged with this body and all the memories were clearly remembered in her mind. She was 100% sure that she really didn't know Zhu Wu Xian. Had Zhu Wu Xian recognized the wrong person? Yiqing Luo. While she remained silent, Zhu Wu Xian took a step towards her. Little Nine, who was in her arms, instantly leapt onto the ground. A ball of dazzling light shone and Little Nine's figure became extremely huge as he bared his fangs and stared at this young man who was approaching his future mistress with ill intentions. Those 9 tails swayed as it blocked Yiqing Luo completely. Zhu Wu Xian's footsteps halted as that expressionless face turned extremely ugly. His eyes overflowed with a thick murderous intent. How dare you! Yiqing Luo's expression sunk as her footwork moved and she dashed in front of Little Nine. Danger. This Zhu Wu Xian was extremely dangerous. The murderous intent which appeared in his eyes represented that he really wanted to kill Little Nine. He was simply a lunatic. Yiqing Luo, follow me, I can let these people go. The lingering murderous intent in Zhu Wu Xian's eyes slowly disappeared under Yiqing Luo's low growl. That pair of calm eagle eyes stared fixedly at her. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Go with him? Yiqing Luo was certain that she had never met Zhu Wu Xian before. However, she definitely could not say that Zhu Wuxin might have mistaken her for someone else. Zhu Wu Xian's emotions were unstable and he was temperamental, sometimes gloomy, sometimes expressionless, so Yiqing Luo really couldn't grasp his temperament. If Zhu Wuxin found out that he had recognized the wrong person, it was very likely that he would kill her without hesitation. The Brothers of the World group would also suffer a calamity. She pursed her lips, feeling a little vexed. If she could be a little stronger, she wouldn't be afraid of Zhu Wuxin's power. This feeling was really depressing. She clenched her fists tightly as her mind raced, trying to think of a way to stall for time. As long as the World Group's brothers left Death God Castle, she had the confidence to escape from Death God Castle. As the saying goes, the ancients have said, I am a girl who knows when to yield and when to stand tall. Her silence made Zhu Wu Xian even more irritated and impatient. He might as well walk towards Yiqing Luo directly as his gaze was icy cold and malicious. Before Little Nine was able to stop him, Zhu Wu Xian had already stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Follow me. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she avoided his hand. Her body retreated by half a step, but she bumped into a thick meat wall. Chapter 540. This wall of flesh was extremely thick and warm, emitting a soothing sandalwood fragrance. That strong and powerful arm wrapped tightly around her waist. Yiqing Luo's heart gradually calmed down. Ah Xian, Yi Qing Luo's eyes sparkled with joy as she swiftly turned around and threw herself into the man's arms. He actually came. It's Xiao Yi and the others, they're fine. Dmo Xian's large palm stroked Yi Qing Luo's hair as his fingertips twirled a lock of hair, gently fiddling with it. The Imperial Palace's disciples have already brought them back safely. The Imperial Palace? Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she raised her head to look at that peerless face. After a while, she revealed a smile that could topple cities. Her arms encircled Dmo Xian's waist. Her face was plastered tightly against Dmo Xian's chest, listening to his heartbeat, smelling his scent. A sweet sense of satisfaction slowly flowed in his heart. The reason why Dmo Xian appeared here was not because Qiao Jin and the others had left Death God Castle in time and called for Dmo Xian. Instead, he was worried about her. Hence, after she and her brothers entered the Death God Castle, she gathered the Monarch Palace's disciples and waited outside. Dmo Xian let her do what she wanted to do, but unbeknownst to her, he had made preparations for the worst outcome. You don't blame me? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at the little person in his arms as his lips curled into a faint arc. His eyes were filled with love. Why would I blame you? Yi Qing Luo rubbed her face against his chest. I know you're worried about me. There's always a chance. Just like now, Yi Qing Luo had met Zhu Wu Xian. The world group suffered a sneak attack from the Iron Blood Warriors. If Dmo Xian had not appeared, the situation today would be totally different. I thought, you don't want to rely on others. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with tenderness as he hugged the woman in his arms tightly. Looking at her, Dmo Xian knew that she was not injured. Fortunately, she had protected herself well. He thought that Yi Qing Luo would be angry. Because this unique girl wouldn't rely on anyone. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with gentleness as her heart was fiercely touched. She raised her head and met his long and narrow peach blossom eyes. Her voice was gentle as she said word by word, but, you're not someone else. Yes, she did not want to rely on others. Because in this world, the only reliable person was himself. However, Dmo Xian was different. She was willing to hand over her back to Dmo Xian and was willing to rely on Dmo Xian. This man would be her future husband. She should learn to rely on him. What's more, this man's intentions were all for her. How could she bear to be angry and blame him? Good, very good, ha ha ha. Yi Qing Luo, good job. Broken laughter came one after another. Zhu Wu Xian smiled as he slowly retreated. He pointed at Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian, with an expression of a husband caught in the act, his eagle eyes filled with agony. You purposely pretended to forget about me and hooked up with another man, Yi Qing Luo. To think that I've been thinking about you for so many years. The two's tender feelings were interrupted by this sharp laughter. When Dmo Xian heard Zhu Wu Xian's accusations, he lowered his eyes towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo had a puzzled look as she shook her head. So many years? Many years? What kind of joke was he cracking? She wasn't even 15 years old yet. Before this, based on her reputation as a waste, it was impossible for her to know such an incredible figure like Zhu Wu Xian. Chapter 541. Zhu Wuxin, you, with Dmo Xian by her side, Yi Qing Luo naturally had no worries. Just as he was about to tell her that Zhu Wuxin had mistaken him for someone else, he saw the youth in the red robe's sleeves flutter in the wind. A powerful burst of profound energy burst out of his body. Streams of profound energy turned into countless sharp blades. In an instant, the entire space was filled with cold light. Covering the sky and covering the earth, it shot towards Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian's direction. Yi Qing Luo's waist tightened as Dmo Xian grabbed her and swiftly retreated. Soon after, he lifted his sleeves and a powerful whirlwind instantly scattered those sharp blades. Boom boom boom, a deafening explosion sounded. Countless deep pits were blasted into the ground. Gravel flew in all directions, and smoke rose in spirals. Yiqing Luo was pulled behind Dmo Xian as her charming eyes widened, looking at this scene in astonishment. Just how strong was her man? Dmo Xian had never released his profound grade in front of her. She only knew that as the legend of Nirvana realm, Dmo Xian, who was revered by everyone, was very strong. But to what extent, she did not know. However, she knew that Zhu Wuxin was very strong. At the very least, if she were to fight with Zhu Wuxin, she would definitely not be able to gain any advantage. There was a high chance that he would be injured. Whereas under Zhu Wuxian's rage, he brought along a maniacal intent of destroying anything that he couldn't obtain. The profound qi that he released was actually suppressed back by Dmo Xian with a casual wave of his sleeves. It was enough to show that Dmo Xian's profound grade was at least one level higher than Zhu Wuxian. Zhu Wuxin also realized this point. He was forced to retreat a few steps by Dmo Xian's counterattack and barely managed to stabilize his footsteps. He narrowed his eagle-like eyes, and there was a cold glint in them. If he were to go all out, he might not be Dmo Xian's opponent. But, Zhu Wuxian's vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. Those deep eyes that were sealed in ice for 3 feet stared deeply at her. As though he wanted to use that layer of frost to seal Yiqing Luo completely. After a while, Zhu Wuxin clenched his fists. Forget it. Anyway, he had already found Yiqing Luo and he had waited for so many years, so a little while more wouldn't make a difference. One day, he would make Yiqing Luo admit personally that she remembered him. Yiqing Luo, you can forget about escaping from me. After saying this, the corners of Zhu Wuxin's mouth twitched coldly. With a leap, he disappeared from the secret room. That sentence was like an icy cold venomous snake, tightly coiling around Yiqing Luo. She couldn't help but shiver. Touching her own arm, she inched closer to Dmo Xian's arms, her face turned slightly gloomy. He can't be serious, right? You and him, I've only seen him once. Yiqing Luo didn't hesitate to interrupt his words and immediately explained, only when we were at the Heavenly Academy's freshman training grounds, he was on the 2nd floor and I was on the 1st floor. We just took a casual glance and didn't even say a word. Dmo Xian lowered his head and gently caressed her face. I didn't suspect you. Yiqing Luo's gaze towards Zhu Wuxian was very unfamiliar. Especially when she heard Zhu Wuxin's expression as if she had caught her husband in the act, she was filled with helplessness and confusion. Dmo Xian naturally believed in Yiqing Luo's memory. If he had really met Zhu Wuxin and had a deep relationship with him, he would definitely remember him. It's good that you believe me. I also don't know why he's so certain that I'm the person he's looking for. Moreover, Zhu Wuxian had accurately called out her name. Her lower jaw was abruptly lifted up by Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Her lower jaw was clasped by Zhu Wuxian earlier and it was still aching. Sensing Yiqing Luo's expression, Dmo Xian immediately released his hand. Chapter 542. I'm fine. Yiqing Luo closed his palm as her charming eyes were filled with smiles, not painful. But I'm in pain. Dmo Xian's long arms suddenly exerted strength as he held her delicate body tightly. The man's head was buried in the crook of her neck. His eyelashes were very long and dense. As he shook, it was like a feather brushing past her skin, causing her to shiver slightly. Lil Luo, do you know, my heart will ache. The man's deep voice was like a mellow whine as it seeped into her ears. The smile on Yiqing Luo's lips slowly congealed by the side of her lips. The expression on her face started to loosen. His words intoxicated her heart. When had there ever been such a person who would feel heartache for her pain? When had there ever been such a person who treated her like a treasure? How fortunate was she to meet a person who loved her so much. Yiqing Luo blinked as her curly long eyelashes were stained with some moisture. Her hands cupped Dmo Xian's face as she proactively offered her pink lips. That slightly moist eyelashes cast a circle of shadow on her eyelids. It accentuated that elegant and exquisite face, making one's heart flutter. Dmo Xian was stunned as he immediately regained his senses as his large palm locked onto the back of Yiqing Luo's head as he deepened the kiss. Only, this kiss had just ignited. That tightly shut door was suddenly pushed open as a loud and clear voice rang, "Castle Lord, it's bad. Death God Castle has suffered a heavy blow." After the guard rushed into the secret room, he discovered. Where was his castle lord's shadow in the secret room? Who was this pair of lovers who couldn't bear to part from each other as they kissed? They even arranged a date to Death God Castle? Their guts were just too big. Before the guard could blow the whistle on his chest, his body suddenly felt light as he was sent flying. Dmo Xian's face was steely green as his discontented eyes were dyed black as he stared coldly at that guard. That damned fellow. He actually dared to disturb him and Lil Luo's tenderness at such a crucial moment. He finally waited for Lil Luo to take the initiative. At this moment, Dmo Xian even had the intention to kill that guard. Death God Castle was overwhelmed by the appearance of the Arch Palace's disciples. Yan Shao Yi and the rest took advantage of the chaos and successfully left Death God Castle with the help of the Imperial Palace disciples. This battle lasted for an entire 6 hours before it finally came to a stop. Whereas 6 hours later, Yiqing Luo and the others had already returned to the mansion. And in these 6 hours, the news regarding Death God Castle had already spread through the streets and alleys. It was said that Death God Castle suffered heavy casualties in this battle. However, the Emperor Palace's disciples didn't enter the Death God Castle to steal anything. After the fight, the Emperor Palace's disciples waved their sleeves and left. It was completely as though the Emperor Palace was purposely finding fault with the Death God Castle. Sitting in the main hall, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laughed out loud when she heard the news that Xiao Jin had inquired about. Death God Castle was famous for its internal mechanisms and arrays. Those guards might have been considered experts in the past. However, 10 years ago, Saint Thief had fallen in Death God Castle. Hence, very few people would attempt to barge into Death God Castle. This kind of peaceful days had long steadied those guards' temperaments. Moreover, that day Zhu Wu Xian wasn't present in Death God Castle, so the guards' morale was low. Naturally, they couldn't win against the brave Emperor Palace's disciples. But this battle went on for 6 hours. She assumed that Dmo Xian was jealous because of Zhu Wu Xian's matter. Otherwise, after she and the World Group's brothers left Death God Castle safely, the Emperor Palace should have retracted their troops. This man, acted as though he didn't care at all in front of her. But in actual fact, she still felt disgusted. Chapter 543. Oh hey, now we're talking about proper business, can you not put on that "I'm very blissful" expression? Xiao Jin sat on the chair by the side as he covered his eyes and cried out exaggeratedly. Looking at Yiqing Luo's smile, that was called 1,000 dainty and 100 enchanting, her eyes filled with tenderness. It was simply blinding, his titanium alloy dog eyes all right. The few brothers beside him all laughed out secretly. Yiqing Luo regained her senses, and on seeing her brother's mischievous smiles, her cheeks blushed red instantly. She then turned her head to look at Dmo Xian, who had already changed his appearance. That pair of peach blossom eyes were filled with smiles. Yiqing Luo flew into a rage out of embarrassment as she bit her lips angrily and stared fiercely at him, immediately putting on a solemn expression. Let's talk about proper business, let's talk about proper business. Everyone in the main hall immediately laughed out loudly. Xiao Jin was especially exaggerated as he stood up and laughed out loud. Usually he was used to seeing Yiqing Luo's straightforward side and occasionally seeing her revealing this coquettish look because of Dmo Xian. He couldn't bear it. Everyone laughed out loud while Long Yunzhan, who was sitting beside Xiao Jin, was still expressionless as he stared coldly at Yuqi Peng, who was sitting opposite him. This was the mansion where the World Group gathered. Because of this, Xiao Jin only allowed Yuqi Peng's 2 trusted aides and that Duke Jing to accompany Yuqi Peng into the mansion. In the entire main hall, there were 60 over people. Only Yuqi Peng, there were only 4 of them. Yu Peng was filled with apprehension as he was so nervous that his entire body's muscles were taut. The area where his right hand was severed was also twitching in pain because of the taut muscles. No matter how arrogant Duke Jing was usually, he wasn't an idiot. Now that he was in someone else's territory and the surrounding people all looked not to be trifled with. Especially when he saw that Yi Qing Luo, who totally disregarded his identity at the Mercenary Association that day, he didn't say a single word. He had been listening to these youngsters talking about their own matters. When Duke Jing heard Yi Qing Luo laughing, his gaze subconsciously turned towards Yi Qing Luo. In his heart, this woman was totally not an ordinary woman. Which lady was as fierce as her? But at this glance, he saw Yi Qing Luo smiling like a flower. Her curved eyes were filled with happiness and sweetness. This smile was bright and radiant. It was like a flaming rose slowly blooming. In a split second, Duke Jing only felt that his heart was thumping non-stop. She was so beautiful. Uncle Monarch had bestowed him with many beauties, but none of those ladies in the residence could be compared to 1/10,000th of Yi Qing Luo. He recalled her domineering and awe-inspiring appearance that day at the Mercenary Guild. Suddenly, he felt that only such a woman was worthy of his distinguished status. Duke Jing. A stern voice rang in his ears. Duke Jing suddenly raised his head and saw a pair of icy cold eyes. His eyes were different from ordinary people. It was a pair of azure eyes that were as blue as the sea and sky, and they were suffused with a piercingly cold light. It was as if she could see through his soul from the bottom of his eyes. Duke Jing shuddered as he stood up. Here. Here, I'm here. This interlude made everyone's gazes in the main hall gather onto Duke Jing. Duke Jing felt a chill down his spine as his head was filled with cold sweat. What's wrong? He spoke, his voice trembling. The World Group's group leader's gaze was simply too icy cold. As though he had seen through his thoughts towards Yi Qing Luo. Duke Jing hated this feeling. Chapter 544. Eldest young Master Yuqi said that he would make a deal with the dark forces and you're the one who introduced him. Yi Qing Luo casted a glance at him as she spoke out calmly. Dark forces? When Duke Jing heard that, his expression instantly turned flustered as he subconsciously turned around and wanted to leave. The youngsters who were standing at the entrance all stood up one by one, forming a meat wall. These youngsters' faces were still slightly immature. But that imposing manner pressured Duke Jing so much that he retreated a few steps. Tell me. How did you get in touch with the dark forces? Why did you make me make a deal with the dark forces? Yu Peng saw the atmosphere turning stiff as he bore with the intense pain in his wrist as he turned his head and stared at Duke Jing. The reason why he ended up with an ending where his right hand was chopped off was all because of Duke Jing. If it wasn't for Duke Jing who pulled him along to make some soul deal with the dark forces, he wouldn't have been swallowed so badly. If it wasn't for the fact that he met Yi Qing Luo, by now, he would have turned into a dried corpse. A dried corpse which had been swallowed by the dark forces. Because of this, when Yi Qing Luo and Xiao Jin interrogated him about the dark forces, he didn't hesitate to say out Duke Jing's name. Yi Qing Luo saved Yu Peng and brought the Iron Blood warriors out from Death God Castle. The motive was to find out the news about the dark forces from his mouth. She wondered if it was her misperception. Somehow she felt that the dark forces' targets seemed to be her. Around her, there were more and more people who made deals with the dark forces. Yu Peng. You promised this Duke that you will not betray me. Duke Jing's face was steely green as he returned to his own seat under the coercion of the bunch of youngsters. Yu Peng gave a cold harumph. You also swore that it's just a deal and that it wouldn't affect my life. Do you know that I was almost swallowed by this strange energy today? No, impossible. Duke Jing's eyes widened. That's something which can borrow your energy, how could it be swallowed? His words paused as he lowered his head to look at Yu Peng's bandaged-up hand which was obviously chopped off. His body started to tremble uncontrollably. No wonder, those cultivators who came back alive from Death God Castle carried him on their shoulders, all the way to this huge mansion. On the way, He also heard about the matter of Yuchi Peng's hand being chopped off. Those profound practitioners spoke very vaguely. Duke Jing roughly understood that it was Yuchi Peng's huge axe which was attached by the black qi and almost swallowed Yuchi Peng. Whereas Yiqing Luo used her fan to chop off Yuchi Peng's hand before she managed to escape from that huge axe's devouring. Then Duke Jing, how did you get in touch with the dark forces and how did you make the deal with them? Looking at Duke Jing's expression, Yiqing Luo knew that he understood what had happened as her lips curled into a smile which didn't look like a smile. This smile was different from the radiant smile just now. Duke Jing's entire body turned icy cold as he felt goosebumps all over as his heart was filled with fear. When he raised his eyes to look at Yiqing Luo, her half-squinted eyes reflected a sharp glint, as though it had pierced into his chest. Duke Jing's but fell onto the chair. This king also doesn't know. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as her smile gradually turned cold. This king really doesn't know. This king has never made a deal with the dark forces before. Duke Jing hugged his head as he shook his head furiously. This king only heard that the dark forces' energy can raise one's power. As long as you give enough souls, the dark forces will help you to fulfill all your wishes. Chapter 545. As the old general's son, Duke Jing was later brought back to the palace by the monarch and was pampered endlessly. Although under the doting of the monarch, this general's son had become completely useless. But the bloodline of a general was still the bloodline of a general. Duke Jing assumed that since he was the general's son, he should have the same lofty sentiments as his father. Especially after hearing the evaluation of him from the people outside the palace when he was visiting women. Duke Jing wanted to make a name for himself even more, to prove that he wasn't a mediocre person, to fiercely slap those people's faces. It was also at this time that he met Yuchi Peng. After getting to know Yuchi Peng, he was infected by Yuchi Peng's lofty sentiments and persistence towards his dreams. He wholeheartedly treated Yuchi Peng as his own brother. Yuchi Peng also chatted happily with him. He thought that Yuchi Peng was talented, brave and intelligent. Even if he did not have the title of prince, he would still be able to become an overlord. The two of them hit it off immediately. He wanted to form a mercenary group together. Yuchi Peng was the leader and was in charge of everything on the surface. Whereas Duke Jing was in charge of the mercenary group's internal affairs, which was to be a money tree. Seeing the Iron Blood warriors getting stronger and stronger, Duke Jing seemed to be able to see himself standing at the highest level of the mercenary group, with a wave of his arm and tens of thousands of people responding to him. The hot blood in his heart was ignited by Yuchi Peng. He kept urging Yuchi Peng to establish a mercenary guild. But Yuchi Peng always used the reason that the current strength of the mercenary group was not strong enough and they were unable to upgrade the mercenary group in the shortest time possible to reject him. He watched as the predators grew stronger and stronger. There were already 5,000 of them, and they had taken over the market that the mercenary union had to pass through, becoming the local tyrant. Duke Jing was delighted with himself. Just as Duke Jing was anxious to establish a mercenary group to flaunt his ability to Uncle Monarch, Yuchi Peng finally nodded his head and agreed to head to the Mercenary Association to register the mercenary group. However, Yuchi Peng made a request. Yuchi Peng hoped to use Duke Jing's name to gather some earth profound and above cultivators with extremely fast speed, and to recruit a large number of thieves. He said it was for the development of the mercenary group. Duke Jing had always listened to whatever Yuchi Peng said. When he heard that it was for the sake of the mercenary group, he didn't think too much about it. Without saying a word to Uncle June, he set up a table at the entrance of the mansion and gathered the thieves and cultivators. It was at this moment that the dark forces came looking for them. It was a man wearing a black cloak from head to toe. The figure was stooped, and the voice was hoarse and ear-piercing. It was impossible to tell the gender of the black-cloaked man. The black-cloaked man directly invited Duke Jing, wanting to discuss a deal with him. The black-cloaked man told him that the reason why Yuchi Peng was looking for bandits was to enter Death God Castle and complete a mercenary group mission. If he was willing to use his soul as a trade, the the black-cloaked man would give them enough power to complete the task and raise their profound rank. Yuqi-peng immediately nodded in agreement. He had always been bold and arrogant, thinking that with Uncle June around, the entire West Continent would have to give him face. Naturally, he didn't think that someone would lie to him. He was willing to use his soul as a trade to increase his strength and complete the mercenary group's first mission. Unexpectedly, the black-cloaked man rejected the deal on the grounds that his soul was too weak. Hence, Duke Jing brought Yuqi-peng over. As the eldest young master of an aristocratic family, Yuqi-peng had been nurtured as the future patriarch of the Yuqi family since he was young, so his soul power wasn't low. The strong all thirsted for power. Chapter 546. What? When Yuqi-peng heard that, he stood up in shock. As he was overly agitated, the chair beside his legs was overturned onto the ground. A deathly aura appeared on his pale face. After some time, he suddenly laughed out loudly. He laughed until his entire body was twitching as he stared at Duke Jing's eyes, but it was filled with sorrow and emptiness. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly but didn't interrupt Yuqi-peng's crazy laughter. Until Yuqi-peng couldn't catch his breath from laughing so hard as he couldn't stop coughing. He coughed as his legs were unstable as he fell onto the ground. He didn't get up as he just laid on the ground with his 4 limbs spread out. Yiqing Luo poured a cup of tea as she slowly got up and walked to his side, passing the water to him. Yuqi-peng, who was lying on the ground, didn't bother about the cup in front of him. His gaze was still empty as his lips curled into a smile. Do you know, the one who told me that the Mercenary Association would issue this high-grade rare mission that day, was someone from the Dark Forces. When he said that, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. The cup in Yiqing Luo's hand shook as she frowned and speedily placed the cup aside as she grabbed Yuqi-peng's collar. What did you say? Black-cloaked man, stooped figure, ear-piercing voice, unable to differentiate gender. Word by word, he repeated what Duke Jing had said earlier. Following that, his pale lips trembled. It's this black-cloaked man who told me that the Mercenary Association would issue a mission to head to Death God Castle to steal the exquisite pagoda, and Duke Jing would help me to complete the mission safely. Didn't Duke Jing bring you to do a deal with the Dark Forces? Haven't you seen the black-cloaked man? Yiqing Luo's brows creased suspiciously. Earlier Yuqi-peng's performance was that he totally didn't know what the Dark Forces were. Moreover, Yuqi-peng was the future patriarch of the Yuqi family. If he had seen the black-cloaked man and told him about this mission, why would he sign a soul deal with the black-cloaked man through Duke Jing? Based on Yuqi-peng's intelligence, he naturally knew that something was amiss. No. Yuqi-peng's left hand's fingers clenched tightly into a fist. The smile on his face slowly turned into pain. The thirst for power had blinded his eyes. It was also because he was too confident, believing in his own ability and also believing that under his influence, Duke Jing wouldn't have the guts to lie to him. He had never seen the so-called Dark Force emissary. Everything was done through Duke Jing. Everyone fell silent. Yuqi-peng was directly brought over from Death God Castle. After that, he asked the Iron Blood warriors to bring Duke Jing to exchange for Yuqi-peng. The two of them had no chance to collude in advance. After all, Yuqi-peng had always believed in the Dark Force's energy and had always believed that as long as the Dark Force's energy was attached to him, not to mention one Yiqing Luo, even if 10 of them came, he wasn't afraid at all. Furthermore, Yuqi-peng's appearance did not seem to be faking it. When the words of these two people were combined, it was a huge conspiracy. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she stared at Yuqi-peng, whose face was ashen as she raised her voice. Jin Zi, arrange a few brothers to send eldest young Master Yuqi and Duke Jing back to the Iron Blood warriors first. After Yuqi-peng and Duke Jing were sent away, Long Yunzhan's dull azure blue eyes looked towards Yiqing Luo. This Dark Force's motive is directed at you? Yiqing Luo returned to her own seat and sat down as she nodded her head with a grave expression. I also have this feeling. Linking Yuqi-peng and Duke Jing's words together, it was obvious that there was a pair of invisible hands behind the scenes, pushing the development of the plan. Chapter 547. Then. The person who issued the exquisite pagoda's mission, could it be? Xiao Jin suddenly stood up as his index finger trembled. I've thought of many ways to investigate this person but to no avail. There's a possibility of this. Yi Qing Luo nodded. If Yu Qipeng and Duke Jing were just a chess piece in the dark force's hands, then the so-called exquisite pagoda could possibly be a chess piece of the dark forces. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? Just when she was leading her group to register for the mercenary group, she coincidentally met the Iron Blood warriors? Wait. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased as her expression turned slightly grave. How did the dark forces know that I want to establish a mercenary group? The minute this question was raised, the entire hall's atmosphere turned solemn. 60 over youngsters looked at each other in dismay as they realized the seriousness of the problem. Their whereabouts. They were being monitored by the so-called dark forces? If this was really the case, that would be too terrifying. The youngsters had goosebumps all over as they couldn't help but rub their arms. Not exactly. Dmo Xian's brows rose as his ordinary-looking face made that pair of peach blossom eyes look even shinier. The dark forces can appear beside you without any trace, so naturally they have their own forces in the academy. Yi Qing Luo nodded her head in enlightenment. Her eyes suddenly shone as though she thought of something. Dark forces. That day, she was on the second floor of the library pavilion when she eavesdropped on the conversation between the director and the so-called guardian. Recalling the guardian mentioning about the freshman and the director mentioned that he kept a tight watch on the freshman. Could it be that the lord mentioned by the guardian, that guardian, was someone from the dark forces? This thought shocked Yi Qing Luo so much that her expression turned extremely grave. If the director listened to the dark forces, then Heavenly Academy would be in trouble. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's expression changing, Dmo Xian leaned over and caressed her forehead which was oozing with cold sweat. What did you think of? No, nothing. Yi Qing Luo brushed his hand away as her back felt a chill. She slowly shook her head. These were only her guesses and there was no evidence to prove it. There might be a problem with the director, but he had after all been the director of Heavenly Academy for over 10 years. Furthermore, from the short interaction with the director, he had a huge ambition. And he liked the feeling of standing on a high position, overlooking others. Without the Heavenly Academy, he was nothing. No matter what, he wouldn't do anything detrimental to the Academy. Thinking in this way, Yi Qing Luo threw this thought to the back of her head. What you mean is, if the dark force's target is me, the other party will definitely guess that I won't stay in the Yi family during the holidays. The Yi family had Yi Qing Jian. Yi Qing Qian had already made a deal with the dark forces. She had once mentioned in the Yi family that during the 3 days of holidays, she would be going out to play with the devil class students. Presumably, Yi Qing Qian would inform the dark forces of this news. The dark forces made use of Yu Qipeng's Iron Blood warriors, just to let Yi Qing Luo's group go against the Iron Blood warriors. Then, did the dark forces know that the world group were students from the devil class? What was the purpose of the underground forces doing this? Countless doubts were surging in his mind. A large palm covered her head. Dmo Xian had unknowingly stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, the other hand caressing her hair. The warm and thick palm, the soothing sandalwood scent enveloped Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 548. Control her? Yi Qing Luo's brows creased into a bundle as she turned her head to look at Dmo Xian behind her. Why? The motive is still unclear, but from this series of events, the dark force's motive is definitely to control you. Dmo Xian analyzed, since the ability assessment, that woman holding the profound Yin sword, and later on Yi Qing Qian, they had all made a deal with the dark forces and wanted to provoke your anger, so that the dark force's profound Yin Qi would be transferred to you. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she thought carefully. It seemed that it was indeed so. If it was said that Yi Qingling and Yi Qing Qian had no choice but to make a deal with the dark forces in order to gain a foothold in the Yi family, It could also be said that the dark force's scope was too wide and she had seen two of them around her. Then now, Yuqi Peng and Duke Jing, both of them, were completely certain that the dark forces had spread around Yiqing Luo's surroundings. Their target was definitely her. But what was the motive of controlling her? Do you still remember your profound jade heart? Dmo Xian's words reminded Yiqing Luo. She stood up abruptly as she turned around and looked at the calm Dmo Xian. You mean? It's not impossible. Dmo Xian's large palm gently caressed her face as a complicated emotion flashed past his peach blossom eyes. But Yiqing Luo's thoughts were placed on what Dmo Xian said and didn't notice the change in his expression. That's right. Her profound jade heart. Her profound jade heart was dug out. This body of hers obviously possessed an extremely strong and enviable top-grade profound jade heart, and by right it should be the best body to cultivate the profound grade. For someone who possessed this kind of profound jade heart, 1 day of cultivation was equivalent to 10 years of ordinary people. However, she couldn't cultivate and had no way to control the profound jade heart to cultivate the profound grade. In Old Man Sung's words, her body and her meridians were all sealed by an extremely strong force. She had never thought about who the person who sealed her was. Ever since she was born, because she was appraised as a top-grade profound jade heart, it could be said that in the entire Three Spring City, or even in the West Continent, she was hailed as a heaven's pride. And it was because of this beautiful reputation. As a result, when she was tested for profound chi, she was determined to be a trash meridian with no cultivation foundation, and her reputation became even worse. When she was tested for profound chi, she was only 3 months old. This was because when a profound practitioner was born, their body would be surrounded by a faint profound energy that would connect with the profound jade heart. Before she was 3 months old, the only people Yiqing Luo had contact with were her mother and Yi Tianquang. Yi Tianquang was absolutely unwilling to seal her meridians. After all, to Yi Tianquang, there was nothing, no one, more important than the status of the Three Springs sect. If Yiqing Luo was a cultivation genius, he couldn't wait to announce it to the world. Then the only possibility was his mother. Did Nyangqin seal her veins after she was born? Why? Towards her mother, Yiqing Luo didn't have many memories. Her mother died when she was 5 years old. A child's memory was not perfect. She only remembered that her mother was a very gentle and virtuous woman. Mother took care of her husband and taught her children, neither jealous nor jealous. She was also wholeheartedly devoted to Yi Tianquang. Yiqing Luo had never seen her mother use the profound grade. But her mother's identity was absolutely not simple. With Yi Tianquang's ambition, it was impossible for him to marry a woman without any status as his official wife. So much so that even after her mother passed away 10 years ago, she still retained her position as the official wife, and retained Yiqing Luo's identity as the D-daughter. Chapter 549. Most importantly, the 2 letters that his mother had left behind. The map and the 2 letters, as well as the letter left behind by his mother, all indicated that the map was extraordinary. How could his mother be an ordinary person? Although Yiqing Luo didn't have a deep memory of her mother, but Yiqing Luo knew that her mother really doted on her. It was very likely that her mother sealed her meridians to protect her. Yiqing Luo's hand slowly covered her own heart and she could faintly see that piece of jade-shaped crystal in her body. This place had once nurtured that top-grade profound heart jade. The goal of the dark forces was very likely to be that profound jade heart. Yiqing Luo suddenly had a feeling of understanding. The goal of the dark forces is this body of mine that nurtures the profound jade heart. In other words, her profound heart jade was very likely dug out by people from the dark forces. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly turned cold. Dark forces. Very well, she would remember this. Since the dark forces wanted to play with her, she would play with them till the end. Yiqing Luo's things, since she had just snatched it, then she had to be prepared to return it 100-fold. Trying to set her up? He had underestimated her. Qing Luo, that castle lord of Death God Castle. Xiao Jin suddenly thought of something. When Yiqing Luo mentioned Death God Castle's castle lord, her expression turned grave, as though she had seen a dreadful beast. Di Zun came just in time today. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to sit here so peacefully. But, Yiqing Luo and Death God Castle's castle lord had met. That was to say, Death God Castle's castle lord knew that Yiqing Luo had barged into Death God Castle and brought away the exquisite pagoda. Wouldn't Death God Castle's castle lord remember Yiqing Luo? Zhu Wuxin, mentioning that person, Yiqing Luo frowned as she sighed helplessly. That lunatic, he shouldn't. I'm here. Don't be afraid. Dmo Xian directly interrupted Yiqing Luo's words as he hugged her waist and lightly kissed her forehead. Everyone, holy shit. Caught off guard, he was fed a face full of dog food. How could he live? After resting for a moment, Yiqing Luo saw the 6 youngsters sitting on the ground in the courtyard. The surrounding youths looked at them enviously. Long Yunjian led the remaining brothers and divided them into 3 teams. The first team accepted some low-level quests. One team would take on an intermediate quest or a low-level rare quest. The first team was personally led by Long Yunjian to take on high-level missions. The process of this mission was surprising, thrilling, and exciting for these youths. It was completely different from the training and combat training they had in the academy. In the process of doing the mission, it was very likely that they would encounter all kinds of accidents, and they needed to deal with them according to the situation. Because of that, even though this mission wasn't long, it was still a great improvement for them. At this time, the 6 youths sitting in the courtyard were originally stuck at the mystic level, unable to advance. After this mission, they were promoted and immediately broke through the barrier of advancement. Especially when he followed Yiqing Luo into Death God Castle, that young man who almost fell into the swamp illusion was the most eye-catching. The space around the young man seemed to be burning. Balls of spiritual energy revolved around him unceasingly. Yiqing Luo's heart warmed up as she saw a black halo circling beneath the young man's feet, with 6 star patterns constantly lingering. Immediately following that, 2 more star patterns appeared indistinctly. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed past a sliver of astonishment. He's actually going to advance by 2 grades. 2 grades. Chapter 550. The profound rank above the profound rank was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, even if it was just 1 rank. Among the youths, there wasn't a single person who could rise 2 ranks in one go. Looking at the young man who was sitting on the ground with spiritual energy circulating around him, the other youths revealed looks of envy. The other youngsters who followed Yiqing Luo into Death God Castle naturally understood the reason for this youngster's advancement. However, he didn't expect that he would be able to rise by 2 ranks in a row. If they had known earlier, they would have also tried falling into the swamp. Who knows, they might have been able to level up. As the youth absorbed it, a burst of profound energy erupted. His body emitted an intense light that was dazzling. A powerful profound energy rose from the youth's feet like a whirlpool. As soon as he opened his eyes, a sharp light burst forth from the youth's eyes. He stood up and clenched his fists. After feeling his strength, a joyful smile immediately appeared on his face. Congratulations. A cold voice sounded beside his ear. The young man turned his head and saw Yiqing Luo who was standing behind him. As usual, her black outfit accentuated her slender figure. His long black hair was tied up high and fixed at the back of his head, making him look valiant. However, the long and narrow expression on her face made her look even more charming. The youth's heart trembled. He cupped his hands and knelt on one knee. Thank you for your guidance, Vice Commander. When he was in Death God Castle, he showed signs of advancing. At that time, if he had directly advanced, he would only have advanced a single grade. They would also be discovered by the guards of Death God Castle, causing the mission to fail. However, Yiqing Luo taught him how to guide his profound chi to store in his profound heart jade, and how to correctly combine profound chi with his profound heart jade. The profound energy that had always been stored within the profound jade heart had been under a high degree of tension for a long period of time. The change in his state of mind caused the fluctuations of his profound energy to become more and more intense. That was how he was able to advance 2 ranks. Everything was all thanks to Yiqing Luo. Those who are grateful are pure in heart. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she helped him up and looked into his eyes. What's your name? Baiming Liancheng. The youth's sonorous voice answered her question. North Sea. Yiqing Luo raised her brows in surprise. This surname was really rare. Generally speaking, compound surnames belong to large families. North Sea, this family name seemed to belong to a large aristocratic family from another continent. Everyone has already advanced, right? Now, we need to set off to the Mercenary Association to hand in the mission. Xiao Jin's excited voice sounded from the inner courtyard. Then, he walked out with a face full of smiles and Yan Xiaoyi followed behind him. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. Today, several teams had completed their tasks at hand. After completing the quest, it was best to hand it in as soon as possible. In case of any accidents. Among the training missions, the contents of the missions overlapped quite a bit. For example, for a low-level training mission, Mission A would require a certain medicinal herb from a certain place, while Mission B would also require a certain medicinal herb from a certain place. Because of this, mercenary groups would often fight over the items they needed for their missions. Yan Xiaoyi had already calculated, other than Yiqing Luo's high-grade rare mission, the other 3 small teams had completed 7 low-grade missions, 3 intermediate-grade missions and 1 high-grade mission. In total, there should be about 20 to 30 points of mercenary group honor points. Coupled with the high-grade rare mission reward in Yiqing Luo's hands, they could directly upgrade to a bronze plate mercenary group. Chapter 551. Immediately, Yiqing Luo, Long Yunzhan and the others headed towards the Mercenary Association to submit their mission. Today the youngsters were all exhausted after a long day, so Yiqing Luo asked them to have a good rest as there was an even more important training waiting for them tomorrow. And in their group, there were only Long Yunzhan, Mo Hanshang and 5 others. With Dmo Xian accompanying them, they didn't have to worry about other mercenary groups snatching the mission's required items. The youths were indeed tired and did not reject this arrangement. Now that there were 6 of them, Yiqing Luo summoned Shiju for Long Yunzhan and the other 3 to ride on. What made everyone feel strange was that when Shiju saw Long Yunzhan, it actually produced a feeling of dread. Everyone was puzzled. But Yiqing Luo and Long Yunzhan understood. Because Long Yunzhan's true form was that of a human dragon. Dragons were the noblest of all beasts. This was especially true for the human dragon, whose status was even higher than that of the dragon clan. When magical beasts encounter the dragon clan, they will naturally feel a reflexive fear. Yiqing Luo pacified Shiju for some time before Shiju became their mount. Although he knew that this human dragon was his master's friend, this innate fear couldn't be dispelled no matter what. Lil Luo, come up. Dmo Xian called out Little Nine as he stretched out his hand towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo rubbed Shiju's head and returned to Dmo Xian's side. Riding on phantom beasts and holy beasts was naturally much faster than moving as a team. In less than the time it took to burn a stick of incense, they had already passed the marketplace and were heading straight for the mercenary union. When they passed by the marketplace, Yiqing Luo's nose acutely smelled something as her expression congealed. Wait a minute. The 2 battle pets stopped. Can you smell it? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she raised her hand to cover her nose. The others naturally smelled it. A light breeze blew, bringing with it the smell of blood. The smell of blood was extremely strong. It was a marketplace. Yiqing Luo and the others exchanged glances as they all leapt down from the war beast's back, landing onto the ground. In front of him was the side door of the marketplace. The thick smell of blood was extremely pungent. Something had happened at the marketplace. They rushed through the side door and saw, this was an extremely bloody scene. The entire marketplace was littered with corpses. The stall owners who had set up their stalls yesterday were now lying on the ground. The pungent stench was unbearable. Even his eyes seemed to be covered in a layer of blood red. What caused their faces to darken even more was the dense flock of birds and beasts. Their sharp claws and beaks were constantly fiddling with the corpses. From time to time, an ear-piercing whistle would come out of its mouth. Upon detecting the intrusion of a living person's presence, those bird beasts who were munching on the corpses all raised their long necks, looking towards Yi Qing Luo and the others. These bird beasts were huge, about the size of a stone lion. His eyes were as red as fire, as if blood had filled his pupils. Drops of blood dripped down from the sharp mouth. It's the dark forces. Dmo Xian frowned slightly as his eyes were tainted with a trace of coldness. When everyone heard this, they suddenly understood something. Yuqi Peng's wrist was chopped off because of the dark forces' profound yin qi. He was the future patriarch of the Yuqi family. Severing his right hand was equivalent to severing half of the Yuqi family's empire. In order to nurture Yuqi Peng, how much time, manpower and resources had the Yuqi family spent? But in the end, it turned out to be like this. Chapter 552. How would the Yuqi family take this lying down? The source of all these was the dark forces. Towards this powerhouse, most of them had only heard of it but had never seen it before. But after Yuqi Peng's incident, it would definitely attract the attention of the other large families. If the dark forces wanted to use their strength as bait to sign the soul contract with the cultivators, then the number of people who fell for it would absolutely not be as many as now. Yesterday they went to the marketplace and came into contact with the Iron Blood warriors and these stall owners. So the dark forces people massacred the marketplace. They wanted to shift all the blame onto Yi Qing Luo's team. Massacring everyone who had come into contact with them, even if the Yuqi family came to investigate, the dark forces had nothing to fear. Dark forces? Who could testify? It was just Yuqi Peng casually saying it. Moreover, Yuqi Peng's hand was obviously chopped off by Yi Qing Luo. Perhaps she had some conflict with Yuqi Peng and found an excuse to cheat him. Furthermore, the most important thing was, it was uncertain if Yuqi Peng and Duke Jing were still alive or not. Dark forces are indeed sinister, their methods are just too despicable. Xiao Jin looked at the blood flowing into a river as he clenched his fists tightly. Yan Xiaoyi was so angry that her petite body was trembling as one hand clutched Xiao Jin's sleeve tightly. In her vision, it was a patch of red. Although their own abilities weren't bad, they had also used inhuman methods to deal with others. But they had never seen such a cruel scene. These people, these stall owners, were still talking to them yesterday, and even chatting with them. Today, they had turned into corpses. How could their hearts take it? Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she looked at those huge bird beasts, gritting her teeth silently. Search around, see if there are any survivors. Xiao Jin and Dmo Xian then reacted as they immediately gripped their weapons tightly as they dashed into the pool of blood. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian exchanged glances as they walked towards those bird beasts. The bird beasts gave out sharp cries, and following that, all of them flapped their wings as they flew towards Yi Qing Luo and the others' direction in unison. Their wings were huge, and every time they flapped, it would set off a strong airflow. It opened its mouth, revealing its razor-sharp teeth. Their blood-red eyes were filled with a bloodthirsty aura. They screamed as if they had seen their prey and were extremely excited. Yi Qing Luo's expression was gloomy and cold as her feather fan stirred up a whirlwind, shooting out several strands of silver silk, directly towards the bird beasts in front. Dmo Xian stood by the side and didn't make a move, but followed closely behind Yi Qing Luo. It was within the range that could protect her, but it wouldn't affect Yi Qing Luo's performance. He would not obstruct Yi Qing Luo's growth. He also believed in Yi Qing Luo's ability. Towards this level of bird beast, Yi Qing Luo was more than enough. Moreover, this was also an opportunity for actual combat training. Occasionally, some fearless birds and beasts would attack him. Dmo Xian's long and narrow eyelids flickered slightly and a sharp glint flashed past his eyes. The bird beast was actually torn into two halves. These birds were at least high-level magical beasts and had their own consciousness. After realizing that Dmo Xian wasn't someone to be trifled with, he didn't dare to attack him anymore. Instead, they opened their mouths and bit the other 5 people one by one. Yiqing Luo's fingers held onto the feather fan as her footwork was strange and fast, wandering among those bird beasts. The feather fan in her hands could be used as a long-distance attack weapon, as well as close combat. The speed of killing these bird beasts was both fast and accurate. Chapter 553. Xiao Jin and the others were filled with rage because of these people's violent deaths, and towards these bird beasts, they totally didn't show any mercy. Their killing was called ruthless and merciless. In a split second, the entire marketplace's ground was covered with the blood of those huge bird beasts. The birds and beasts let out shrill screams, and the hundreds of birds and beasts were instantly reduced to only 20. These bird beasts' blood-colored eyes turned even more sinister and bloodthirsty. Flapping their huge wings, they swept up layers of wind and waves as they flew up into the sky. They raised their long necks as their mouths kept giving out that series of cries. They're summoning their companions. Yiqing Luo's expression was cold. These bird beasts were all in the intermediate and advanced grades and had their own consciousness. Beasts were extremely sensitive towards danger. Just like when they saw Dmo Xian, they knew that this person was dangerous, so they didn't dare to attack him. After they realized that Yiqing Luo and the others were in danger, they should have left in groups. But unfortunately, these bird beasts actually summoned their own companions, in a vain attempt to continue contending against them. Was this because of the bird beasts' pride, or? Before they completed their mission, they didn't dare to leave easily? Just a moment later, the marketplace's sky turned pitch black. Densely packed bird beasts were hovering in the sky. The fishy stench from their flapping wings merged with the entire marketplace's blood stench, making one feel nauseous. Looks like these bird beasts are going to massacre the entire marketplace before they leave. Xiao Jin stared at the bird beasts in the sky as he clenched the gold coin darts in his hands tightly. The densely packed bird beasts, as compared to what they saw previously, had doubled in number. Previously the bird beasts were all on land, fighting with them. But now, these bird beasts were hovering in the sky and didn't charge down to make a move on them. But that series of sharp cries seemed to be urging them, which really made them terrified. Xiao Yi, you and Shiju search around to see if there's anyone alive. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as a cold glint flashed past. These bird beasts were actually so intelligent. They knew how to make use of their numbers and cries to break the opponent's mentality. In their hearts, after the fear towards them was born, then they would break them one by one. This kind of intelligence. It didn't seem like a bird beast at all. Yiqing Luo kept the deep thoughts in her eyes as her eyes flashed. Pay attention, these bird beasts might suddenly attack. Shiju and Yan Xiaoyi carefully walked towards the pile of corpses. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a cold smile. Kill. Were these birds trying to play psychological warfare with her? That would depend on whether she would allow it or not. Yiqing Luo's entire body emitted a gush of cold glint as she opened her feather fan, and with a leap, numerous silver threads shot out into midair. Little Nine's body flashed and was already lying below Yiqing Luo. By the time Yiqing Luo was seated properly, its 4 limbs moved and it dashed towards the densely packed flock of birds and beasts. Each of the silver threads was sharp. Another stream of mystical energy flowed, and as it swept towards the herd of beasts, the coarse birds and beasts were sliced into 2 halves. The rest of the people on the ground also moved quickly. Using the surrounding walls as a springboard, he leaped into the air. Every time it jumped, it could kill several birds and beasts. The cries of the birds and beasts became even more shrill and shrill. Fresh blood, the stench of blood, splashed onto Yiqing Luo's face and her clothes. It added a bloodthirsty flirtatious charm to that gorgeous face of hers. Chapter 554. The feather fan in Yiqing Luo's hands waved even faster as her footwork gradually increased. She continued to kill the bird beasts in front of her as she guided her profound jade heart's profound chi towards the direction which she controlled. That wave after wave of profound chi surged out from her body. Mo Han Shang stood on the wall as his action of killing the bird beasts halted. Growing up in the mercenary association since young, he had seen too many people. Mo Han Shang had developed an ability to recognize people. From the first time he met Yiqing Luo, he knew that this beautiful lady who didn't seem to have any profound chi, like an ordinary person, was absolutely not as simple as she looked on the surface. Her body carried a gust of righteous chi. And she had the craftiness and quick-wittedness of a devil from hell. This kind of complicated temperament, on Yiqing Luo's body, was so harmonious. In Death God Castle, he saw Yiqing Luo's quick-wittedness and ability. But at this moment, seeing Yiqing Luo's moves, he was completely subdued by her. It was a strange, ghost-like footwork. Clean and efficient actions. When he saw fresh blood, a flash of excitement and bloodthirst flashed past her eyes. This kind of her, as compared to the usual her, was very different. But this kind of her was so mesmerizing, making one fall for her. Han Shang. A chilly tender rebuke was heard and immediately a red ray shot towards him. That was Yiqing Luo's glower flame fan. That fan spun at an extremely fast speed, directly brushing past Mo Han Shang's cheek. He heard a miserable shriek behind him and immediately felt a stench of blood coming from his back. That feather fan split that bird beast which was sneaking an attack on Mo Han Shang into two halves, and immediately it returned to Yiqing Luo's hand. Han Shang, this is a chance for you to learn from experience. Yiqing Luo's gaze was calm as she looked at him. Only through continuous battles, to absorb experience from battles, will you be able to comprehend. Mo Han Shang was stunned as he clenched the long sword in his hand tightly. In battle, the most taboo is to be absent-minded. If there's a next time, I will not lend a helping hand. After Yiqing Luo finished this sentence, she dashed into the crowd of bird beasts once again. This wasn't a good habit. Yiqing Luo must prevent Mo Han Shang from being absent-minded. If he lost focus in battle, he would be handing his life over to the enemy. When Mo Han Shang heard that, his entire body stiffened as a sliver of resolution surfaced on his handsome face. He didn't care if Yiqing Luo could see it or not as he nodded his head hard towards her direction. Following that, he clenched the long sword in his hand tightly as he dashed into the crowd of bird beasts once again. The four of them were fighting at the front line while Mo Xian stood amidst the corpses strewn all over the ground. His gaze was fixated on Yiqing Luo without blinking. He watched as she dealt with the birds and beasts cleanly and swiftly. Her figure as she moved between the birds and beasts was so graceful and agile. His eyes were gradually filled with smiles. Suddenly, from the other end of the marketplace, Yan Xiaoyi's voice was heard. Found it. There are living people here. That was the tea house where Yiqing Luo led the World Group's youngsters to drink tea that day. The owner of the tea house was hiding in the pile of straw behind the kitchen. He was only crushed by the collapsed house, but he was still alive. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she squinted her eyes as she looked at Yan Xiaoyi. She and Shiju were dragging a man who was covered in blood, carrying him out of the collapsed tea house. Yiqing Luo let Little Nine settle the bird beasts in front of her. With a leap, she speedily walked over to that side. The tea house's owner was trembling all over and on seeing Yiqing Luo and the others, his eyes flashed past a glint of radiance. Yiqing Luo half squatted down as she grabbed the tea house's owner's hand, checking on his extremely weak pulse. Chapter 555. If Yan Xiaoyi was a little later, the tea house boss would probably have to swallow his anger. Yiqing Luo took out some pills from the profound phoenix ring and fed it to the tea house boss. Following that, she helped him bandage his wounds. Seeing the pain on the tea house boss's face gradually subsiding and his complexion getting better, she opened her mouth to ask, "What's going on?" The tea house boss's bloodied hand grabbed Yiqing Luo's arm tightly. "I don't know. These bird beasts suddenly rushed in and ate all the people in the marketplace. That scene was extremely bloody and cruel. The teahouse boss was holding some firewood in the kitchen when he saw that scene. Those bird beasts directly descended from the sky, like an arrow leaving the bow. Their sharp claws grabbed onto a person's shoulder and tore that person into two halves. As the house collapsed, he hid in the grass and saw everything around him clearly. The more he thought, the more the teahouse boss trembled, as his face was filled with fear and terror. Other than you, are there any other people alive? Yi-Ching Luo surveyed the surroundings. The ground had already been dyed red with blood, but she couldn't tell if it was the stall owner's blood or the bird beast's blood. After searching for so long, Yan Xiaoyi only found the teahouse boss. These bird beasts were really vicious. Gone. All gone. The teahouse boss's voice kept on trembling. That flock of bird beasts came too ferociously, too suddenly, we didn't even have time to react. People are already all gone. Yi-Ching Luo narrowed her eyes, as her vision suddenly congealed on that drawing old man who sat opposite the tea house the day before. He said that he wanted to use his own brush to draw down all the beautiful things. But did he know that the beautiful things he thought had harmed the entire marketplace? If it wasn't for the fact that they had stopped here that day, the people in the marketplace would not have been targeted by the dark forces. Hatred started to burn from the bottom of her heart. She clenched her fists tightly, as her brows were filled with a cold viciousness. Dark forces. She would not let them off. Other than these bird beasts, did you see any other suspicious people? Yi-Ching Luo had always felt that these bird beasts were not the only ones who came here. If it wasn't for the fact that someone was instigating them from behind. Even if they had their own willpower, it was impossible for them to know. Psychological warfare. Moreover, beasts had a strong sense of danger. Even though they knew that they were no match for them, they still came wave after wave. Either that or the pride of these birds and beasts did not allow them to retreat. Otherwise, if they left before killing all the people in the market, they would be treated even more severely. Yi-Ching Luo was leaning towards the ladder. No. The teahouse owner paused and suddenly thought of something. Yes. It seems like there was a person, among the birds and beasts, a person wearing a black cloak. He left the market safely, the birds and beasts didn't attack him. At that time, he was hiding under the thatch and could not see clearly. He only felt that the black-cloaked man was really bold, actually daring to walk around these ferocious birds and beasts. It was only after the black-cloaked man left that he realized something was wrong. The black-cloaked man? Yi-Ching Luo's expression congealed as she exchanged glances with Yan Xiaoyi. Sure enough, it was the dark forces. Their conjecture was indeed not wrong. Yi-Ching Luo abruptly stood up as her sharp vision swept across the entire marketplace. In the sky, the birds and beasts were still circling around, giving out ear-piercing cries, continuously summoning their own kind. From this stance, it was obvious that they were going to fight to the death with Yi-Ching Luo and the others. Yi-Ching Luo was even more certain. Chapter 556. Shiju, carry the teahouse owner back to the mansion. Yi-Ching Luo indicated for Yan Xiaoyi to carry the person onto Shiju's back. I'll leave the rest to you. I'll go look for that black-cloaked man. After a pause, he continued, after you're done with the bird beasts, go directly to the mercenary guild to hand in your mission. Don't worry about me. Yan Xiaoyi's expression changed. No, it's too dangerous. The people of the dark world were indeed strange. Moreover, they were in the light while the enemy was in the dark. To Yi-Ching Luo, it was too dangerous. Her words had not even finished howling when Yi-Ching Luo had already turned into a bolt of lightning, charging towards the periphery of the marketplace. Yan Xiaoyi's brows creased. If she chased after them, her ability wasn't enough and she would only drag Yi-Ching Luo down. She turned her head to look at Dmo Xian and was just about to run towards him when she saw that immortal-like figure had already chased after Yi-Ching Luo's footsteps, following up. Yan Xiaoyi let out a sigh of relief. As long as Di Zun was here, everything would be fine. Yiqing Luo stood on the outer treetop as she narrowed her eyes and surveyed the surroundings. These birds and beasts were all hovering in the air around this area. In other words, the black-cloaked man was definitely nearby. The direction from which these birds and beasts were attacking, Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed as she speedily dashed towards the area where the birds and beasts were concentrated. Sure enough, he saw a person shrouded in a cloak standing under a tree not far away from the market. They were stooped and skinny. It was impossible to see the other party's face clearly. It was exactly the same as Duke Jing's description. Her guess was right. Yiqing Luo sneered as her footsteps changed rapidly. The black-cloaked man reacted very quickly. At the instant when Yiqing Luo stared at him, he turned into a black shadow and speedily retreated, hiding among the magical beasts. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered with a cold glint as her lips curled into a cold smile, trying to escape. Before she could move her feet, a figure had already passed her and headed towards the direction where the black-cloaked man had hidden himself. A gust of wind rose from his palm, and the condensed profound chi lifted his head of black hair, making him look as elegant as dust. Shortly after, he felt a palm wind that could devour mountains and rivers slashing over. The flocks of birds and beasts were instantly blasted into pieces. Blood splattered everywhere, and minced meat flew everywhere. However, under the birds and beasts, the black-cloaked man was nowhere to be seen. Ah Xian! Yiqing Luo caught up with the man's footsteps. He ran away. Dmo Xian replied calmly, chase. He never made a move easily. If there was a chance for Yiqing Luo to train, he would absolutely not interfere. However, they were from the Dark Coalition. It was the dark forces that had been plotting against Lil Luo, and wanted Lil Luo's life. He absolutely couldn't let it go. Yiqing Luo nodded and the both of them headed towards the direction which the black-cloaked man disappeared towards. Along the way, the abstruse chi from the dark forces was extremely dense. The black-cloaked man's speed was extremely fast, and his reaction was also godly. Following the black-cloaked man's Xian chi, he chased after him for 100 miles. Not good. I've been tricked. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes and stopped in her tracks. 50 kilometers, she couldn't even catch up within 100 miles? She didn't believe that the black-cloaked man was that fast. Even if she couldn't catch up, it was impossible that Dmo Xian couldn't catch up, right? But that black-cloaked man seemed to have disappeared from the surroundings. Other than the remnant profound chi, she couldn't sense any other presence. This profound chi was obviously left behind intentionally by the other party, to mislead them. It was really the dark forces' style. Forever hiding in the dark, like a rat in the dark. Dmo Xian's gaze was eerily cold, as his eyes seemed to be wrapped with a layer of frost. What a great dark force. Savage to such an extent. Chapter 557. After the black-cloaked man left, these bird beasts seemed to have been freed from their restraints. Instantly, one by one, they escaped at lightning speed. By the time Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian returned to the Mercenary Association, Long Yunzhan and the others had already left. Apparently, they had listened to Yiqing Luo's words and hurried over to the Mercenary Association to submit their mission. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian also followed closely to the Mercenary Association. But when the two of them rushed over to the Mercenary Association, they heard the mercenaries who were passing by the Mercenary Association with grave expressions, discussing something. They could vaguely hear them saying, the World Group, Yuchi, and other similar words. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly sunk as she pulled one of the people who were discussing, what happened? That person was talking excitedly, and on seeing someone asking, he immediately replied, earlier the World Group's group leader came over to submit their mission. You know about the World Group, right? Our mercenary group is the first mercenary group to be promoted to a bronze plate on the second day of its establishment. Something happened to them. Earlier when they were promoted to a mercenary group, everyone was still very happy. Group leader received news from the mercenary badge that the World Group's headquarters had been surrounded by the Yuchi family. It's such a pity for the world group, they are all young and promising youngsters. Why did they offend a large family like the Yuchi family for no reason? The people who were discussing shook their heads regretfully. A newly risen mercenary group, without any powerhouse behind them. But now they were surrounded by one of the four great families, the Yuchi family. This mercenary group absolutely could not survive. Yuchi family? Surrounded the world group? Yuchi Peng? He actually dared to divulge the mansion's address. Yi Qing Luo's expression congealed as her lips curled into an extremely cold arc. She wanted to see what this Yuchi family was trying to do. 3 Springs City, in front of the mansion. The commoners stood far away as they looked at everything in front of them, feeling extremely puzzled. This mansion looked old and dilapidated, and the owner of the mansion was very low profile. How did they offend the Yuchi family for no reason? Whereas when Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian rushed over on Little 9, they saw the majestic scene outside the mansion. Around a few thousand people, dressed in the Yuchi family's uniform, surrounded the entire mansion. This street, which wasn't exactly bustling with people, was now extremely crowded. Yuchi Peng and Duke Jing stood at the entrance of the mansion, and beside them stood a middle-aged man dressed in a navy blue luxurious robe with an imposing manner. They had not argued with each other yet. Standing at the door was Baiming Liancheng. He frowned and was negotiating with the middle-aged man. While speaking of anger, the middle-aged man shouted in a stern voice, "Dark forces? Call your vice commander out for this patriarch." This patriarch would like to personally ask, what is a dark force? This person was actually the patriarch of the Yuchi family. He was Yuchi Peng's father. What was the Yuchi family trying to do by bringing out such a large force and even mobilizing their patriarch? The head of the Yuchi family seemed to want to barge in forcefully, but he was stopped by Baiming Liancheng. Do you know who this patriarch is? The Yuchi patriarch waved his palm towards Baiming Liancheng's chest. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she leapt down from Little 9's back. The feather fan in her hands released a burst of strong airflow, forcefully forcing Patriarch Yuchi's palm chi to retreat. Yi Qing Luo. Father, it's her. Duke Jing and Yuchi Peng spoke at the same time as they stared at Yi Qing Luo, as their eyes were filled with hatred. What show was this? Chapter 558. The World Group. What a great group, you even dare to touch Yuchi family's eldest young master's hand. If this patriarch doesn't massacre the entire world group today, then this patriarch will be letting down the Yuchi family's ancestors. Yuchi family's patriarch's face flushed red as he was unable to restrain his anger. The successor whom he had painstakingly nurtured, was destroyed just like that. Yi Qing Luo. You dare to use the dark forces as an excuse to spread rumors about the dark forces, chopping off our future patriarch's right hand. You're trying to destroy our Yuchi family. Behind him, Yuchi family's guard berated her sternly. Our 4th young master was injured by you, and now you're laying your hands on our eldest young master. What a vicious heart you have. Yi Qing Luo had met this guard before. Wasn't he the helper whom Yuchi had found outside Pristine Elixir Medicine Hall, Yuchi family's elite guard? You said 4th young master let her. Yuchi family's patriarch narrowed his eyes as he sized up Yi Qing Luo coldly. What a great Yi family's 7th miss. I'd not expected it to be you. Both his sons had suffered a loss in the hands of this lady. One was crippled and almost lost his life. The other's right hand was chopped off, which meant that his entire life was ruined. Yi Qing Luo. You spread the dark forces and intentionally hurt Yuchi family, targeting Yuchi family. Today, even if your 3 Springs sect kneels down to apologize to this patriarch will absolutely not forgive you. The manor was surrounded by Yuchi family's people, and these Yuchi family's people were blaming Yi Qing Luo with righteous indignation. Yi Qing Luo's expression was as calm as water as her lips curled into a cold arc, as she watched Yuchi family's patriarch's flushed face coldly from anger, looking at their nonsense, as though she was looking at a clown jumping around. Her attitude made Yuchi family's people even more displeased. Those guards who had once suffered a loss because of Yuchiya at Yiqing Luo's hands, started to speak one after another, bringing out the matters between Yiqing Luo and Yuchiya. Their words had already turned Yiqing Luo into a vicious person. Yiqing Luo continued to look on coldly from the side, because in her eyes, these people weren't worth her nonsense. But she had not expected that just as the situation was in chaos, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly flashed. Looking in that direction, he saw a guard quietly approaching the youths of the World Mercenary Group. This guard suddenly made a move and his sharp killing intent pressed towards Baiming Liansheng, who was standing at the door. Impudent! Yiqing Luo cried out delicately as the feather fan in her fingertips shook and a red glow swept past everyone's line of sight. With this swing of her fan, 10% of the profound chi was released, and in an instant, that guard was sent flying. The Xian Qi then brushed past the tree at the side, and the bark of the tree penetrated into the wood. Everyone was stunned by Yiqing Luo's sudden move, and the World Mercenary Group's men immediately reacted to what had happened earlier. You're too much. Humph, this is clearly a guilty conscience. This woman is so arrogant. She's clearly making an enemy out of our Yuchi family. The members of the Yuchi family were all filled with righteous indignation. They were like tigers that had their buttocks kicked. Both sides were originally suppressing their anger. Now that the fuse had been lit, what reason was there to explain? Momentarily, several people from the Yuchi family rushed towards Yiqing Luo, wanting to settle the score with her. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly as the feather fan in her hands flipped once again and a burst of Xian Qi struck towards the group of people who were rushing forward. The few Yuchi family's guards joined hands and barely managed to obstruct it. But they were jolted so much that they kept retreating, and finally fell on their buttocks onto the ground. Strong. Very strong. Chapter 559. Those elite guards who had clashed with Yiqing Luo previously knew that Yiqing Luo's skills were very strong. Meeting again today, they felt that this young lady was even more astonishing than the first time they met. Obviously, it had only been a month's time. Why did she improve at such a godly speed? A surge of fear arose in the elite guards' hearts. Yiqing Luo's eyes squinted as her pink lips curled upwards, curling into a cold arc. Her gaze shot straight towards Yuchi Peng. Her long and narrow eyes looked enchanting. But that eerie chill seeped out from her eyes, making Yuchi Peng subconsciously shudder. What are you all still in a daze for? Take down this demoness who spread her lies. Yuchi family's patriarch saw his eldest son being frightened by a young lady as he shrank towards his side. His face instantly lost its shine. He had brought along so many guards, but they couldn't even stop a small mercenary group's vice group leader. So what if she was Three Springs sect's young matriarch? Anyone who heard his son whom he had painstakingly nurtured had to die. Especially in front of so many people, he had so many guards. Just a single Yiqing Luo made his Yuchi family's guards run away with their tails between their legs? In future, where would Yuchi family's face be placed? No matter how fearful those elite guards were towards Yiqing Luo, but with their master's command, they had to brace themselves and go forward. Moreover, thousands of guards were all here. No matter how powerful Yiqing Luo was, she would have to pay for it here today. Thinking of this, the elite guards' gazes turned piercingly cold as they exchanged glances. Following that, 10 overguards leapt upwards at the same time, blocking in front of those guards who had been overturned by Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't hesitate as she directly released her profound chi and dashed into the guards. The red feather fan in the young lady's hands was like a flame as it flew over. The elite guards subconsciously recalled 1 month ago when they worked together to protect Yuchiya. Vigilance. That kind of vigilance. They released all their senses but were totally unable to stop Yiqing Luo. A fear arose in the elite guards' hearts. Deeply afraid that Yiqing Luo would disappear before their eyes and suddenly appear behind them, slipping their necks. Because of this fear, the feather fan in Yiqing Luo's hands had already split apart the 10 overguards who were charging towards her. She curled her lips and her eyes curved up. A trace of craftiness flashed across her eyes. Now, these people had been split into two by her, opening up a path. This was the path she wanted. Since the Yuchi family wanted a result, she would give them one. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo suddenly struck out as the red-feathered fan appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Following that, her movements were as fast as lightning, and in a blink of an eye, she overturned those Yuchi family's guards. Yiqing Luo was totally clearing the route, and this route was heading straight towards Yuchi Peng. Yuchi family's guards were all beaten into a daze. All these changes happened too quickly. Originally they were the ones who made the first move, but they had not expected that they were so easily beaten up by Yiqing Luo. Looking at Yiqing Luo again, she was composed, as though she hadn't used much profound energy at all. Stop her. Don't let her get close. Yuchi family's patriarch was after all much more experienced, as he saw through Yiqing Luo's intention with one look. If she really captured Yuchi Peng under everyone's watchful eyes, then his old face would be thrown away completely. Yuchi family's elite guards' hearts instantly tightened. Surely Yiqing Luo wasn't going to repeat the same old trick, right? That time Yuchi was ruined by this move. Following that, the other side's guards also surrounded Yiqing Luo like a beehive, surrounding Yiqing Luo in 3 layers. From what they thought, they should be able to stop her this time, right? Chapter 560. A soft murmur was heard ringing in everyone's ears like a ghost. That soft murmur was like a sigh, without any emotions. There was no ridicule nor ridicule. Because every single word that Yiqing Luo said was the truth. Among the crowd, Yiqing Luo used that strange footwork as fast as lightning. Only a red glow could be seen jumping around like a fire elf. In just 2 mouthfuls of tea's time, Yiqing Luo forcefully broke through the encirclement, and under everyone's astonished gazes, her hand grabbed hold of Yuchi Peng. Not to mention the others, even Yuchi Peng himself had not regained his senses. He originally wanted to see how Yiqing Luo was surrounded. But he had not expected that this human wave tactic, in front of Yiqing Luo, was so weak that it couldn't even withstand a single blow. Finished. Finished. Yuchi family's patriarch and Yuchi Peng were both shocked. The former felt that he had lost all face, while the latter had to consider his own life. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers clasped tightly onto Yuchi Peng's wrist. The other hand was holding on to that feather fan, intentionally or unintentionally placed it in between the both of them. At this distance, not to mention using weapons, even if she didn't, just based on Yiqing Luo's fingertip profound chi, it was enough to exterminate Yuchi Peng. Those elite guards felt a chill down their spines as they stared at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. They were totally certain. After not seeing her for a month, Yiqing Luo had become even stronger. And this degree of strength was absolutely not just 1 or 2 points. That was a kind of qualitative leap. It was simply like a yellow profound first-grade cultivator, leaping to a sky mystic overlord. 1 month ago, Yiqing Luo, under the encirclement of the 2 elite guards, relied on the 2 Mu brothers before she could complete such a shocking feat, but today, in front of thousands of guards, she used a simple and crude method to restrain Yuchi Peng. Yuchi family's patriarch was still by his side and hadn't reacted in time. It showed how powerful Yiqing Luo was. At this moment, Yuchi Peng's forehead was drenched in cold sweat as a sliver of regret arose in his heart. Perhaps, he shouldn't have provoked Yiqing Luo so rashly. This consequence was much more tragic than what he had expected. Yuchi Peng wasn't an idiot, and before he came, he had gone through a series of considerations. In his opinion, the Yuchi family had called over 1,000 guards to surround the mansion. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Father directly blamed Yiqing Luo for her mistake. Wouldn't Yiqing Luo be at a loss of what to do and hurriedly explain herself? At the very least, he had to deal with the Yuchi family. In any case, their Yuchi family had a strong army, so wouldn't the little girl be scared out of her wits? However, the actual result made Yuchi Peng feel terrified, exceptionally shocked. Under the current circumstances, Yu Qipeng didn't dare to think in this way anymore. He absolutely believed that even if he were to kill him on the spot, Yi Qing Luo would absolutely not bat an eyelid. At this moment, Yu Qipeng finally understood what number 4 had experienced back then. It wasn't that old 4 was too weak, and it wasn't that those elite guards didn't give it their all. It was because this woman was too strong. Her speed was so fast that she could silently tear you into pieces. Bastard, let go of our young master. How dare you attack our young master? What gall! The Yuchi patriarch was so angry that his entire body was shaking. Under the gazes of everyone, under the gazes of everyone. Yi Qing Luo was actually this arrogant. He gritted his teeth as he cried out angrily, still not going to surrender. Perhaps our Yuchi family can still spare your life. The guards beside him all started to open their mouths to berate Yi Qing Luo when they saw Patriarch opening his mouth, as though the person whom Yi Qing Luo was restraining was their father. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.